Welcome everybody back to the Awakened Beings. I am here with Jessica Armstrong and Pierre Cormier. So happy to be here talking today about letting go. We were getting into a pretty good conversation before it started, and I'm excited about this one. I think all of us have been going through some pretty big changes, and letting go is like a really big part of just embracing what our path is and our spirituality. And so for me, I've been going through huge shifts and changes in the last especially 6 months, and letting go of what is not aligned has been a huge part of that for me in my life, and embracing what life is bringing to me, that showing me what is aligned. So let's just jump right into it. Who wants to start?
Well, I think, for me, there's a lot of levels for letting go, for sure. And learning how to let go of what I can't control was definitely a big part of it. And it led to bigger opportunities and less stress, and then it evolved into something that is almost an organic reaction now in my day-to-day life when things happen and unexpectedly, because we live in uncertainty. We never know what gifts we're going to get for the day, and sometimes maybe you're a little late getting started, and then you slip on the snow outside, or you drop something and you have to clean it up. All these little things that used to really add up a lot for me and could just ruin the rest of my day. Once I started really practicing letting go, even on a bigger level, as I started, to my journey of understanding my connection to spirituality and everything, it evolved into this thing that I can use daily, where I can kind of like, I know that I have to let that go. I can't let this little incident that's happened take over my energy and just put me off for the rest of the day. And it's become almost so natural now to laugh something off or just keep moving forward, which is really the big part of it, is that you're letting go of these things that kind of tie you down so that you can move forward with everything that you have. And so it's something that I'm very grateful for, to be able to have in my day-to-day alone. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of layers, but I'll start with that one.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with a lot of what you said there. And I think the path of letting go, as we were discussing earlier, before we started this recording, like the path of letting go, like you said, has a lot of layers, but it always comes back to coming to our true self. And that's what I've been blessed to be able to come to terms with and accept in my life, is really connecting with what is in alignment with who you really are, and then the rest working on kind of weeding that out. And when I watched the documentary I'm Not Your Guru by Tony Robbins, he mentioned something like describing these things as weeds, as like these negative thoughts, these things that bring us down, that take away from our vital energy, that can be a trigger. You can make you go off track in terms of what you're focusing on, and kind of bring you to one side. And the process of weeding those things out, for me, has always been anchored in wanting to come back to my true self, and wanting to come back to who I truly am, and anything else that doesn't align with that vibration be kind of chopped off and weeded out. And I do agree that there's multiple layers to it, because it can be as simple as, cutting someone out from your life that, is very clearly not serving you. And it can go as deep as letting go of some childhood programming, childhood trauma. So Yeah, there are multiple layers that we could discuss on this in this conversation for sure.
Yeah, I find that what I've been really challenged with a lot is because I have such a deep love for people in general, and recognizing that I have to honor that love that I have for people and not allow people in my life who don't honor me. And
Mm.
that's been a huge aha moment, because it's like I've, for many, many years, would allow myself to have people around that are disrespectful towards maybe my knowledge or like who I am as a person. And, that would be always very triggering for me. So it would, I would get to these certain levels of happiness, and then I would be brought down with these triggers by being around these people. And it's been a huge thing for me to say, like, okay, why are these people important? And how do I get out of the people pleaser, because that's a huge part of loving people, is wanting to please them all the time. Is like, how do I let go of that enough to recognize that, okay, even though I love this person, they're not the best in my life for me. And say, like, okay, I need to put space between myself and them to be able to learn the lesson, even because when I was in it, I was being triggered repeatedly, and it was very difficult to get the lesson because my body was constantly in the fight or flight mode. So the only way is to like completely cut it off and find that relaxation, and then go back to it and start to incorporate, like, why was that important? What was the lesson for me? What was it for me? And, I've been kind of feeling around this topic, asking in spiritual groups, like, what is your opinion on this? When you feel yourself getting triggered, and do you continue going towards the trigger, or do you remove the trigger? When is it time to let go of the trigger? Or when is it time to dive into the trigger, right? Like, it's such a, and there's so many different layers to it. Like you were saying, Jessica, when it's time to let go of something, sometimes it's really easy. Maybe it's a habit. Maybe you're letting go of a food, and that food might be attached to some emotion that's ready to be processed. Or on the other hand, when it's people, I find people are way more involved in the different layers of my being, of, maybe guilt or people pleasing, and those kinds of things. That it's, recognizing that the trigger will bring you down in your frequency, but the darkness is to help bring you back to the light in the first place. And that's the process of letting go, is reconnecting to those higher frequencies again. But yeah, any thoughts on that part of it?
I like that you ask that question to other people, because it's such an interesting thing to hear. Because with, through coaching, when I'm coaching clients, I find a lot of times that the triggering things become such a part of them. Like, it's easier to accept that stuff just triggers them, and this is just what they go through, and this is the burden that they carry, instead of trying to rework that to figure out a way so there isn't, this trigger. And it really takes some investigating into, where are you feeling this in your body, in your soul? Like, where are you feeling it internally? And when is that coming up? What is the environment? What is the thing, the action that is inviting this trigger to be a part of you? Because people can hold on to those things, and then it just really grows and grows into this tense weight that we're really holding on to. And it can cause more triggering things, because you're just now like attracting that, whatever we really feel, I mean, that can expand. And so the more we're focused on all of these ways that external things affect us, we're not allowing ourselves to rework that internally and try to see what we can do for ourselves to heal what it is that's causing these. Because I'll tell you from personal experience, letting go of things is really how I got to where I am today. And if I hadn't learned how to do that in a healthy way, but also in a way that I'm standing up for myself almost. I'm saying, hey, this doesn't feel good. I'm really tired of being brought down by these external environments, that things that I have no control over, maybe, you know. So like being able to say, hey, I'm not going to take it anymore and move forward it's really empowering. It's really accepting yourself for who you are. And it's also, you know, loving yourself enough to say, hey, I'm willing to work with you, you know, yourself on getting this figured out. So we don't have to live this way. And of course it's practice and it takes time. But it gets there and it gets easier and easier every time. So I think it's just really important for us in all the ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, to really get a good handle on how to let go of whichever layer that needs to be, whether it's just a habit, you know, old patterns. Those are especially things that people have a hard time letting go of because they're just such a big part of us. You know, they've been instilled in us probably before we even know where they came from. And we don't realize the toll that it really takes on us. So getting, you know, that information out to others and teaching them tools to help with letting go is so important to the mental health of everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I was mentioning before we started the recording, I was sharing some what I consider to be like very crucial elements of letting go, and why it is so important is, you know, if you're someone who has mere interest in letting go, you know, that comes from being fed up, being, you know, sick and tired of being sick and tired, and knowing that there's something going on in your life that is not serving you. There's a thought process, there's something coming in, triggering you, making you feel, you know, taking away from your energy, making you feel depleted, making you feel whatever emotion that comes up. And whenever someone comes to that place of, you know, being like, I don't want to feel this anymore, I don't want to experience this anymore, that's our soul, our intuition is guiding us down this path of, you know, discovering what that means for us, and discovering how we can learn to overcome these things. And there's this very powerful insight that I gained from one of my teachers. He basically said that triggers is just an opportunity for us to grow. It comes up for us to see it. If the trigger wasn't there, we wouldn't necessarily see the pattern going on in the background. So it's kind of like life's way of bringing that thing that needs to be addressed for us to grow and to keep evolving. Because oftentimes these patterns, these things that weigh us down, whether it's a belief about yourself, whether that's an emotional trauma that you keep reliving, all these different things that take away from our vital energy, our life force energy, is not aligned with our spiritual nature, which is to expand and grow and to keep, you know, getting to the source. So these triggers and all these things come up to serve us. They come up to help us grow, to help us become the real versions of who we are on a deep spiritual level. And I think it's so important for people, especially people that are willing, because not everyone wants to engage in this type of work. It's not, and it's there's no right or wrong. It's okay if people don't want to. However, I think it's inevitable that, you know, the human biology will bring you to this place of, you know, being fed up with feeling like crap. Because once you become aware of one small thing, it starts this cascade of realizations and insights and just like cognitions of, well, I've been feeling this way because of this, and I've been feeling this way because of this. And now you begin to ask those deep soul striking questions, the open-ended questions that cannot be answered with a yes or no answer. So the 6 honest serving men, those is something I teach a lot and I preach a lot. It's asking questions that open the right doors, and bring you deeper into the matter that's in front of you. The what, when, where, who, how, and why. They give you this opportunity to expand on what is going on in front of you. And there's various healing modalities. There's all these different things that people can engage with. But before you ask those questions, and before you get to that place of making a decision, like you were saying, Jessica, like, you just get fed up. We get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you're just, you begin asking those questions. And as soon as your focus shifts, then you begin attracting different things, and your focus, the reticular activating system in your brain is starting to start focusing on other things that will bring you into a different result, a different endpoint. So for me, letting go has always been triggered by wanting to feel better, wanting to raise my vibration, wanting to step into the life that I'm meant to live. And it's all by asking these soul striking questions, going deep within yourself and being willing to face what it is that's going on, so that you can bring yourself to a better place.
Yeah, I love that point too, that, that these triggers and these things that kind of bring this stuff up to the surface. I mean, each time it's kind of our inner self saying, hey, like, I would love to work on this. I would love to figure out what's going on here. And, and then and like you said, I love that, is that at some point in everyone's life, whether we're willing to face it or not, it is going to come up to the point where you're just so fed up. And, I meet people who have really stuck into that space, and there really isn't, they just cannot move forward to the point where, like, hey, I'm ready to ask for help. And like you said, that is totally fine. There's a lot of stigma around asking for help, and, people are all wired differently as well. We all come from different experiences, but it's hoping that we can, catch people or other people or even ourselves when our internal self is asking for that help itself, to be able to reach out and find people who have that experience or the tools to ask the powerful questions and guide you, hopefully to, heal in a way. So that was really great. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, I am taking notes as we're going, because there's so many great points coming up here. The thing that I really wanted to talk about was, we've talked a little bit about the layers and how those layers can make your cup. And what I see is how those layers can make your cup feel very full. That, and I talk a lot about this doing the inner child stuff, is, we have an original incident that happened. And if we don't process the emotions as they're coming up, going through it, we put layers and layers and layers and layers around that trauma. So, and then eventually your emotions are screaming at you, and you have so many different triggers that, fire these hormones, these stress hormones. And sometimes those stress hormones become addictive to people, that it's hard to step out of that, right? Because we're such creatures of habit. And if we don't know what it feels like to feel clear of those things, if we've never, a lot of people have been living with these traumas since they were really young. So they have no idea what it feels like to not have them, or to ask the right questions, or to, ask for help where you need it, to help somebody to guide you to that place, to bring you back to that clarity inside, and it's an addiction. It's like a cycle that we can get on, and it's hard to get off. And so, talking about letting go to some people is like, oh man, they can't even fathom letting go of maybe people that they've become identified from, and that they're addicted to, that it continually. And the other thing that's coming in as I talk about this is how those stress hormones, how they, when they flood your system, they shut everything down, and how, that could be confused as a peaceful experience, because when we get pushed to that limit and then we just drop off and there's no more left, finally, it's like, oh, they think that they're having a relaxation period in that. And really what it is it's just getting the body ready for the next one, instead of, really going to the core of the expectations or the shame that we're carrying or the guilt, or, whatever the emotion or the reason is that we're addicted to these experiences, and being able to like really let those things inside of us go. Because only when we let go of those things inside of us can we let go of the external experiences that are triggering them.
Right. Yeah. And that idea that we shut down, I've been there before, and it took a long time for me to realize that it was kind of a pattern in a way for me, where it was like I would go through these moments where I was really maybe trying new things or going out of my comfort zone, but then those old, things like the not good enough, not being good enough, or not being able to follow through, all of those old narratives that I carried around would bring so much stress to me that I'd get to a point where I literally couldn't function. Like it was like I was completely shut down. I couldn't pay attention or focus on the things that I really wanted to. And that was something that was really hard for me, because I felt like I had so much more, but because when I was trying to create new things and be the creator that I was born to be, because of these other things, the other traumas that I had, it would really stress me out to no end. So I could never bring what I wanted out into fruition. And I started realizing that that was a big part of me that was like, okay, I need to start doing some work, on myself. I'm really fed up with this. But a big part of it too was self-care, knowing that I've reached a point and I'm getting to this point where my body has literally shut myself down. I haven't even chosen to do it. My physical mind and body is like, nope, you're done. I can't handle this anymore. And often that, of course, for me I'd be like, I can't just sit around. I can't just like do nothing, what does that say about me? And just even more, the more triggers, the more layers. And I was like, no, this is just telling me that I need to stop. I think it was my acupuncturist. So it was I told her, I was like, I can't sleep and all of this. And she was like, you need to sleep and you need to like not do anything for the next 4 days. And I did. She's like, it's prescribed to you, so you have to. So I literally didn't. And I felt amazing afterwards. And I started incorporating that into my life because I understand for me, I have a time where I can work creatively. And then I need to be able to take some space away from it so I can come back with my cup full. And of course, it was also making sure that being creative was joyful and not stressful anymore. But that it's just recognizing those times when you need to integrate some self-care. And even if that just means some more sleep or a day where you're not thinking about anything, that's just trying to listen to yourself more and like ask yourself what it is that I really need. And then those questions that what could I let go of, hopefully can start coming in as well. It's just like if you have your plate is too full, maybe that's another thing where you need to let something go. But yeah, that was a big thing for me, was really trying to learn self-care to balance some of that out.
Yeah, I've gone through a very similar thing. I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm 26, so I'm still very early on in my human journey. And I started this work when I was around 15 years old, is when I first had my awakening. And so the dynamic that I had to learn was dealing with a lot of, teenage problems and things like that, like high school drama. But what really triggered me into wanting to let things go was exactly what you were saying, like going through these periods of time where I just felt depleted and I felt like I needed to learn how to take care of myself. And I think that's what a lot of people, perhaps people that are listening to this, wanting to learn more about letting go, and what that means is learning to manage their energy and learning how to make it so that they can show up in their lives and their, for their family, for their friends, in a way that's aligned with who they really are. And when we're depleted, it's hard to be ourselves, and when we don't feel like ourselves, that triggers even more things, and it's this downward spiral that, inevitably, when you start waking up, you become aware of these things, and as you become aware, you get into these situations that cause these triggers, and then it's a very, especially when you begin waking up to these things, it can be very overwhelming. And I talk a lot about this when I talk about meditation, how most people don't like meditating in the beginning, because when you close your eyes and you're making space for yourself, you're tuning into a world where there's a lot of chaos. And there's a lot of things going on in that internal world and in that mind of yours, and in the biology that you've been, as you were saying, the chemicals of the past are flowing in your, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about that, how we do get physically addicted to chemicals of our past, whether that's stress or fear. And it can be hard to let those things go because the body physically becomes addicted to those things. But I think, as you wake up, and this is the word waking up is like very important here, because if you don't wake up, if you don't go through that awakening, then you don't become aware of the fact that you do need to let things go. And so the awakening process, which is the whole world is going through right now, is people will have to be faced with these decisions where they either choose to continue living the way they live, or they make a decision to begin moving towards something better. And all throughout that path of becoming something better, becoming a better version of yourself, whatever word you want to use, there's some things that are keeping you where you are right now based on the experience that you've had thus far, but the person that you want to become cannot live with those things anymore. And whether that is your cleanliness standard in your home, whether that's the food choices that you make that are affecting your energy levels and your vibration and your ability to feel good, whether that is emotions that you're holding on to, past relationships, there's so many, as you were saying, so many layers to letting go, but it's always so liberating and freeing. And I think you mentioned you talked about this a little earlier, how when the more you engage in these things, the more natural it becomes, and your baseline level of energy and the baseline, like the way that you show up in your life, goes up and up and up. And eventually, I've experienced this, where you kind of reach a place where when something comes up, I just get excited because I can recognize it. Now I have the awareness, I've spent enough time with my eyes closed asking these questions. And everyone can get to this point where, you have such a deep awareness of who you are and where you come from and how your upbringing affected you. And we can all get to this crescendo point where now you go through life, things come up as a trigger. And instead of allowing that to bring you down, you're just kind of getting excited. And because you build this different perspective around it. And you can then use that situation and ask questions to shift your perspective on it so that it empowers you versus depleting you. And it took many, many years to get to that place, but through meditation and consistent work and showing up for yourself and making sure that you have this high energy as much as you can, and then letting go of the things that no longer serve you, you become better and better at it. It's just like anything, like when you learn to tie your shoelace, in the beginning, you have no idea what you're doing and you're struggling and it's frustrating and you're going through this process. And it's like that with anything. When you learn something new for the first time, it can be very, it's like a daunting task for you. It's like, oh, I have to invest so much time and energy. But then after like 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, a year, as you're getting used to feeling yourself out, observing yourself moving through life, observing these triggers come up, and allowing yourself to just accept that and embrace that process and not resist it, you become better and better at, being human. It's interesting because this whole conversation, I think the intention of sharing what we're sharing is we've gone through these experiences and gained some insight as to how to be a better human, how to tune into our spirituality, and how to use these tools to just make life more enjoyable. And I think the path that, if you look at this on a timeline, like the intention that we have and how it's going to develop over time, we're heading towards a future where we are born and we do have a owner's manual on how to make this life good and how to make it so that we can have enough tools growing up, and we can learn to do this, like conscious parenting. Now this whole movement of teaching our children to manage their energies and teaching our children to tune into themselves at a young age, giving them these tools. I have nephews. My sister is big into spirituality. She's an amazing healer, and she's teaching her children these things. And it's like this beautiful process of, seeing them just put their hands on their energy centers and just breathing and just connecting with themselves. And but it's something that we can all learn to do. And unfortunately, the modern school system, education system doesn't teach us how to do that. So I think it's important to have these conversations and bring that into people's awareness. So
I like to say you have to love the process. And I think that's where with that early age, teaching it is it's just like feeding your kids vegetables or something. Like, if you're only giving them healthy food, that's what they're going to really enjoy as they grow up. So if you're giving them these healthy ways of handling their energy and everything like that, they'll love that process. Because I'm right with you on that, Pierre. Like, I love to learn new things about what's going on that I can work on. I love to do that work. I love to do it. Mm-hmm. But it's not always easy to get started because of the unknown. I think, can be scary. You don't know what's going to come up. That can be scary to people. But yeah, the once you have that reward the first time, then it becomes just better and better and better, especially you have a strong desire to change. But it's really learning to love the process of it, because we have to do it our whole lives. And that's really the important part is to fall in love with the process of it.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And I love the piece where you touched on being willing to learn and change, because if you're not willing, and I think that's like one of the major components that really separate people from either being peaceful and calm and still dealing with these triggers and still living in these cycles of negative thoughts, negative emotions, and just feeling stuck, is the willingness. And some people are fast learners, some people are slow learners, and it all depends on how willing they are to prioritize their self-growth. Some people have it in them and it comes naturally. Some people have to work a little harder, but everyone, we're all the same on a fundamental level. So it's just a matter of asking the right questions and going through enough pain so that you come to a place where you say enough is enough, and you start asking the right questions, and then you can begin moving down this path of growth.
I love what we're talking about here, and reading the Course in Miracles has helped me to understand the difference between your connection to source feeling inside, or your emotional side, or the mental layer. And so we have all of these layers. And in the book, they really talk about making that internal world, that internal connection to source, the most important connection. So we're constantly having to tune into that part of us to kind of get our compass as to where we're going. And emotions are kind of like the beacon to tell us, wait a minute, maybe there's something not in alignment here that we need to pay attention to. And having the right questions and knowing the right things to, and not even having the right questions. There are no right questions or wrong questions. It's just asking questions, like knowing that we can ask our internal world and that our internal world has answers for us. Or, asking the internal world, we may not get the answer right away, but then soon enough, somebody will come into our world to help guide us, to help show us the way of, letting go of those emotions or letting go of those pains or incidences that keep us trapped in a lower frequency or a lower vibration that, is not really serving our purpose and what we're here to bring to the collective. And ultimately, I think that's what we're all here to achieve, is to bring our true genius, like our spirit, to the collective, to be able to expend that energy instead of the fear energy or like different programming that we develop along the way. And it's like those little moments of letting go and letting go, and just, it's almost like going up a ladder. Every time you let go of a layer, you're going up one more step and up one more step to connect and express more of that spirit self through you. And just, yeah, it's such a beautiful thing. And I love, Pierre, like at 26 to have this knowledge and be living this truth. It's such a powerful gift. And I'm so happy to hear you speak about it, because it's like so inspiring,
It's a lot of hope there, for the younger generations. I love to hear that. I love to hear what your sister, I believe, is doing with her children. I mean, it's so incredible to hear that. I know a lot of people from my generation were not given that opportunity as much as I am seeming to see that happen more now. So yes, it brings me my heart a lot of hope. So
Absolutely.
Yes, I've been blessed in my life, and I've been able to meet some very powerful teachers who, and I do believe in destiny, and I do believe that we come here and we plan our lives and we set ourselves up to fulfill certain missions, and everyone has a role to play on a global scale. And I've had this dream in my mind. I came here with this purpose, I came here with this vision, and I was fortunate and lucky enough to connect with it at a young age and begin listening to the inner voice and doing the things that needed to be done in order to align my life with that. And yeah, like there's thousands and thousands of people like us that have always felt there's something not right about this planet. There's something that we can be, incorporating more of. There's something that we can change. There's a lot of room for improvement, but there's also a lot of people with beautiful intentions that are connecting to their source, that connecting to their higher self, and following through on what it is that they're receiving as a intuitive hunch or whatever you may call it. But I appreciate that recognition. I think, there's one of my purposes to shine that light on the younger generation, and to especially for men and guys, because they have a really hard time tuning into that feminine energy. And in life, it's important to consider that there is a masculine and a feminine. And I think this whole perception of masculine and feminine is being like skewed, and there's a lot of distortion around, embracing that, as a man, tuning into your emotions and crying and feeling and talking about these things can be a bit more challenging, just because of the way our brain is wired. It's like either we're talking about making something happen or we're talking about our feelings, and we have a really hard time doing both. And I think men are really misunderstood, and those things, that's a whole other conversation. But I've been on this mission to help as many people as possible, and the whole time I've realized that if I want to be able to help people, I need to help myself. And that's what's been my motivating factor to let go of the things that are not conducive to this planet's evolution and growth, and by first doing that work on myself, then I can show people the way. And I think that's just been one of my gifts is the endless asking questions, the endless thirst for knowledge, and always having my nose in everything, and wanting to, always having that intention of pure heartedness, and wanting to help people get to the truth of who they are. So I do see this planet as a very beautiful place. There's potential for us to live in harmony, live with total peace and love and connectedness. I just know this in my soul, and I've always known it, and that's been my guiding light. Like there is good in everyone. Everyone has the power to take charge of themselves. Everyone has the power to connect with their inner self, and to connect with source, and to connect with the spirituality component of life, which is, who we really are. So yes, there is hope. I agree.
Yeah, and I have always had that same mission. I was fortunate to open up quite young, like you did too. But through the years, it's been, you have these like big moments of growth, and then, you kind of go through, it's almost like you have these like, expansion and then contraction and then expansion and then contraction. I find that's been my journey with it so far. But the last 5 years or 7 years in my life, it's been just more expansion than contraction. And I think that that's where we're at with the evolutionary process here, is there's just more expansion happening than contraction. And I think that, the process of everything as it's kind of come along, because I remember when I first just started, there was nobody to have these conversations with.
Yeah.
Like if I tried to talk about it, a lot of times people called me a Bible thumper, or like, all of these, and I was accused of like, joining a cult, and like, it was like, no, like, this is just spirituality. This is just coming from inside of me. And yeah. The other thing that I wanted to talk about too, that's really important with letting go, is setting boundaries and being able to, be firm in that area. And I find that when you really become truly compassionate towards yourself, when you really love, your purpose and what you're here to do, and that's I speak to a lot of spiritually oriented people that still have not fallen in love with that part of it yet. They're still really angry, and they're still really like, feeling like they're trapped on this earth plane, and that, what the F am I doing here, and all of this, right? And I understand that. I went through that too, but when you really fall in love with it, when you really, are able to grasp the depth of the power of it, and it's not power, but it's like the truth, that we're all one, we're all connected to the same thing, and we're all living here to bring that information and the earth's information to that collective. We're all here processing the fear, and the more we process the fear, the more that information can go into the collective, the more that expands everybody else that's living on the planet. As it's like the monkey thing, when one monkey over here on the other side of the earth, learns how to do a skill, a monkey on the other side of the earth can all of a sudden learn how to do that skill.
The 100 monkey syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's, what humans are. That's what we're doing. So as we're being able to process these emotions that have been snuffed down by the matrix, or, the powers that be, we're not allowed to be emotional. We're not allowed to, say that, that we have emotions, and men, God forbid, if men were to show emotion, like, it's just, there's so many things about emotions that are taboo, but they're the very thing that keep us from being able to tap into the true nature of who we really are. So it's only through emotional discovery and being able to, and I'm really starting to shift the idea of like using the word trauma, because traumas to me are just life lessons that are there to help you to expand and to move deeper inward. And the more that we put our boundaries in place, the more that we're able to, I don't want to say protect, because there's never going to be a time when we don't have to process something, or when there's things that are happening around us. Like, we're always just getting better at dealing with it. We're always just getting better at being able to hold our inner peace through the chaos, so that, all the chaos can be happening around us, but inside, that inner core is never affected by it. It's always just able to guide you to the next thing that you need to do, and guide you to the next, and sometimes the emotions get triggered by all that chaos, that we lose the guidance. And, boundaries are so important in the sense that when the chaos is happening, when you have people around you who are able to hold space and be able to love you for you through it, it really helps you to hold that peace. And sometimes, it's knowing where people fit in your life. And those boundaries is about knowing, like, okay, I can't talk to that person about this, even though I love them and they mean a lot to me. They can't be in this space with me, and that's okay. There is other spaces that person belongs, that it may not be this vulnerable space. And knowing those boundaries and being able to trust yourself. And I find trust is such a huge word, on so many levels. Being able to trust who we are and the role that we're playing, and trust that the things that are happening to us is to bring us closer to that spiritual self, to that spiritual energy that's trying to move through us. And just maintaining boundaries and knowing where people fit is such a huge part of letting go of, those stress hormones and those stressful experiences, and holding on to that inner peace.
Yeah, you have such a beautiful way of like explaining all of that. And I feel like, for me, I know that I had to go through the stuff I had to go through to become the person I am. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And I like that idea of maybe not focusing so much on how the word trauma, which can hold a negative connotation, and instead use those as these gifts that you've been given to move forward. And yes, that's going to be hard, especially depending on the types of traumas, but it is a way to, and it's all about trying to teach this new way of how we see things, and how we tell ourselves what these things are, and having a more positive mindset, and really just practicing that regularly, so it has a more impactful thing to you. And I think there are people like us that were born to be disruptors. We're here to disrupt the illusion of what, kind of what this society has built around us, or the people who wanted us to be in this space, wanted us to feel and think. I mean, you think a lot about how we've gotten to here, and how did we get so disconnected to our purpose as humans, as a collective. And a lot of that comes from this dysfunction that's been created around us. It's a reason why women and the feminine side have a hard time being, forward, and because it's been so turned away in the past. It just was not seen as a strength, when really it is. You really need both of those powers working together. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now, because more women are coming forward to make these disruptions, and men who understand the importance and are stronger with who they are. Just love seeing them coming forward more too, and just disrupting this idea that we have around the patriarchy, or around what we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to go through life, and what everything's supposed to look like. I mean, how stressful. It's all so much to try to fit in here, when really we just need to, fit in for ourselves and the people who are around us that cherish who we are as well. So that's what I like to think of us as, disrupting the normal, trying to bring us back to what we were originally here for.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love everything that's being said here. It's I haven't been on these types of calls very much in the past. I've always been kind of doing a lot of the work by myself, and being in my own little world. And only recently have I started to put myself out there more. And it's really nice to participate in these conversations, gaining a lot of insight just from hearing both of your perspectives. And I'm sure everyone listening will also gain a lot of value from what's being shared. I wanted to touch on, you said something very interesting, Linda, on trauma, and how you mentioned how we shouldn't necessarily look at trauma like as trauma, but just like a lesson. And I really like that point, because I think people tend to identify with those traumas and say, oh, my trauma, or my illness, my disease, my mental disorder, and as soon as you identify with it, you're solidifying it in your field, in your energy, in yourself, and you're identifying, this is who I am. I have this. And I really like the fact that you brought that up, because I think it's important for people to understand that things happen for them and not to them. And the things that you go through your life, and like you said, Jessica, everything that you've gone through, and I can agree with every single thing you said, it made you who you are. We are meant to go through these difficult times, difficult situations, to teach us the lessons we are meant to learn. And I just wanted to bring that up again, because I think it's so important for people to realize, that they're not a victim, that they are the ones responsible. And everything, if we can just approach life with that attitude of mind, and the like you said, Jessica, the more positive attitude of mind and the positive, mentality, we can look at these things that happen to us with more, and have more authority over them, and not let them, grab onto us like demons, just like trying to claw us down. We can realize that, this is just a situation. Instead of blowing out of proportion, it's like, it's just a situation. What is it trying to teach me? How can I grow out of this situation and grow stronger from it? And I've gone through my own trauma, my own experiences that caused me to feel strong emotions, but we can learn to change the perception we have of that situation, and empower ourselves through that, instead of letting it drag us down. So I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely. There was, I love what you were talking there about identity, because I feel like even the work that I do, people become so identified by their traumas and the things that that happen to them. And that's what creates a grief process when you're letting it go. Because you have to grieve that identity. You have to grieve to let it go. It's like we hold so much on to the people that match those vibrations. And even though they trigger us and all of that, when we're letting it go, it's a huge identity release, like or a shedding. It's identity shedding. And it's scary. It can feel very like the earth is like moving from right underneath your feet, and it's hard to be stable when you're shedding these things. But it's so important. It's so important to let go of the identity that we've created through these traumas and through these experiences that we have, and recognize that all we're always doing right from the beginning through all of it is needing connection. We all need connection. We need connection with our mom and dads. We need connection to ourselves. We need connection to peers. We need connection, even in work situations. Like, we're always just looking for the connection that we can get from other people. That's the basis of everything. It's one of the biggest basic human needs that we all possess. And, we create these identities to have that connection, because sometimes in the environments that we grow up in, we have to have these identities in order to be able to get love from mom and dad, or be able to get love from cousins and aunts and uncles, or wherever it is. And so, these identities, as we're starting to let them go, it's very it feels very shaky. It feels, just like you were saying, Jessica, it's like stepping into the unknown, because how can you matter to people if you don't have these identities? How can people love you if you don't do these things or put these faces forward that, has worked well for you in the past? So it's like recognizing these releases of identity, and recognizing that it's always for connection. We're always looking for connection.
Yeah. When I learned that kind of that part of, like, when I started therapy, that was my first step towards my healing journey. And you often hear this about, therapy, is that there is this, all of a sudden, this chaotic emotion, and how am I supposed to feel? I'm like, I'm kind of feeling better, but I'm kind of feeling crazy. And and it's all this stuff that you're just you're just opening up, and you're seeing in a different light. And if she hadn't told me that it's grief, which made so much sense, it wouldn't have registered. And it's true. It's like you're grieving this, and this loss of what you once knew. And now, you're on this brand new path, and what's that going to be like? For me, of course, it was really exciting. But it could be very overwhelming for a lot of people. And I think that's why it's important to have somebody who can have those conversations with you and connect with you through that. And being able to, or the identity thing with the trauma is interesting, because I feel like I've done that. And even though I feel like I have a healthy relationship with my trauma, there's still something that I identify with it. But maybe that's I think I use a lot of my experience to help with what I do now. But there's probably still some attachment there that you don't even realize. And it is like, it can become a part of you if you don't know how to let that go. And when I started grieving that kind of identity, my first thing was like, wow, I don't know who I am. And then that's when the real good stuff started happening. That's when the real work was great. And I think those are kind of those steps that you have to take, is getting to that point of letting go of the stuff that doesn't align with you now, and then being open to learn and receive, and move forward into, falling in love with yourself, finding out what really does mean so much to you, and what really does align to you, and trusting that it's there, trusting that trusting that it's already part of you, and just allowing it to take place it can be really incredible. But
yeah, I like that trusting part. I think it's very important to understand that there is a higher intelligence at play, and that you don't have to do all the work.
yeah.
And a big part of that journey is is just surrendering and allowing. And those were two words that completely changed my life when it came to my spiritual development. My teacher early on in my development was drilling these things in my mind, surrender and allow. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I discovered it over the years of meditating. And it, like, the more you begin to think about these concepts and the more you go through these challenges, and then you're like, okay, how can I just allow and surrender? And you begin to trust this divine intelligence that's always at play. And I think it's important to keep in mind that you don't have to do all the work. Like, we are always so guided and so divinely supported in this process, because people think life is against them, but life is always for you. And even if you're being presented with negative situations, it's life's way of trying to make you stronger, or trying to make you see something from a different perspective so you can grow from it instead of allowing it to tear you down. And the trust component is very important when it comes to that, because it basically removes all the heavy lifting, and you just have to set your intentions and be present with yourself and be patient and just move through that process.
Yeah, so beautiful. What a wonderful conversation today. Thank you so much for joining. It's, I was a little bit worried because I was like, oh, how is this going to go? I wasn't quite sure. And it just, unfolded to this like beautiful, wonderful. And I hope everybody watching gets, these wonderful nuggets of, assistance on your path, because, there's just so many different ways of looking at it, and letting go is such a powerful tool to your, tuning inwards even more and trusting deeper parts of that inner self that, can be the guide, just like you were saying, Pierre. Like, we don't have to do it all on our own. There is assistance. I can't tell you how many times I've just been like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of weight here. I'm just going to put it in your hands and just hope for the best. And it always works out, so it's just, trusting that more and more, and letting go of the things that don't serve or that are not in alignment with who you are. And and thank you both so much for being here. And you brought so many wonderful points and such a beautiful conversation. And I can't wait till next time.
Thank you. Same here.
No, I agree. It was a very fun experience to, bounce back ideas, and we are all connected to the same thing, and we all have our own expression of it, which is what makes life so interesting, because we were all talking about the same things, sharing the same intention, but the words that we choose to say, will resonate with different people in different ways. And I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations and put it out there, just to share our perspectives and our experiences, so that people can have these sources of inspiration. Because, if it wasn't for a constant flow of information in the field, or like having somewhat like a source of information for people to plug into, we forget so quickly, and we always need reminders of the truth of who we are, and whatever it is that we're learning. We need to remind ourselves on a regular basis. Otherwise, we just tend to slip off track, and so it's so important for us to have these conversations and put it out there, and give permission to people to engage in this type of work, because some people feel it in their soul. They just need that little push off the edge, and that's been true in my life. I've met so many people that just acted as that catalyst for me, that just gave me the permission to move forward with what I was feeling inside, whether that was a spiritual teacher, a healer, a coach, just a friend. Sometimes God speaks through everyone, and sometimes you just meet someone, they tell you something, it's like, what just happened there? And it just gives you that permission to go. So very grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to having more conversations and bringing in more minds as well, so that we can have a bigger impact. So.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And we look forward to the next time, and we will all see you soon.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for putting this together.
Bye, Linda. Bye, Pierre. Thank